and welcome back. Today we are reviewing Lost on a Mountain in Maine. I did not expect to be reviewing this book, but I'm so excited to chat with you about it. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, and let's get cozy. I actually picked this up to read with my son at night. We've been doing one chapter of a elementary or a middle grade book every night before bed, and it's been a nice little routine, a little bit different than the picture books. It feels like it really gets him into like a relaxed state and ready for bed. So I picked this up just because we had it, and it ended up being my first 5-star book of the year. I'm obsessed, and I also learned something. In the past, when I've read books out loud, I didn't necessarily have the retention that I do when I'm reading it to myself internally, but this time I really was able to have that retention factor as I was reading it out loud to my son. And maybe possibly because it's a juvenile fiction, it was easier to digest in that way. But I really enjoyed this, and my son really enjoyed looking at the map. He loved looking at this map every night after we finished our chapter. This book was published in 1939. It's a non-fiction retelling of a 12-year-old boy who got lost on Mount Katahdin in Maine for 9 days when he was 12 years old. The determination that he shows, the focus, the ability to just keep moving his feet is amazing. He never once lost hope. He, even in those moments where he felt really terrible, there's such perseverance in his words. This is Donn Fendler's retelling to Joseph Egan. And Joseph Egan does an incredible job writing exactly as Donn is telling the story. And even the footnotes are really well placed. Sometimes I find that footnotes really distract from the book or take away. It's like it's not an added value. This was definitely an added value. They were placed at the best points. They gave a little bit more information that maybe Donn himself didn't have at the time. And one of the reasons I'm so drawn to this, well, a couple of reasons I'm so drawn to this. One, it's based on a mountain in Maine where I was born and raised and live today. So it has a special place in my heart. Two, I actually met Donn Fendler. He's passed now, but when he was alive, he did tons of school tours where he would go and talk to elementary age kids about the book, about his adventure. And I remember reading this in elementary school, loving the story and thinking it was really neat to meet Donn Fendler. And I had this vision of him sitting as an older man in front of us as a elementary school and sharing his story. I gave this 10s across the board. 10s across the board. This was so good. I would recommend this for anybody looking for an adventure type story. It's nonfiction, but it reads a little bit like a fiction. It's very adventure based. If this was a nonfiction book, it would definitely be adventure themed. It's juvenile fiction. It was published in 1939, and I think it truly stands the test of time. This is a real, true survival story, and you get the experience of being in this 12-year-old boy's mind as he is surviving in the wilderness in Maine for 9 days. He loses his pants, loses his shoes. The mosquitoes are horrendous, the way that he describes him. If you haven't been in Maine during black fly season, like, I can only imagine in the middle of the woods how terrible they are. He describes encounters with wildlife. He describes how his mind is kind of going in and out, especially towards the end of the 9 days. And then once we got to 9 day, spoiler, he survives. I met him in elementary school, so I think you might have figured that. He survives, and the moment when he finds human life again, I felt like I wanted to cheer. It was so exciting. I felt tears close to my eyes, and I'm not somebody who cries a lot when reading. It was just very touching. I felt for Donn. I felt for this boy, especially being older now. I could really think, like, when I was in elementary school, he was older than me. 12 would be older than me, right? Now that I'm much older than 12, it's like, wow, a young kid had that perseverance. He talks a lot about Boy Scouts and kind of remembering and calling training from his father, from his brother. It was really interesting. And I also loved his connection to his faith, which was God, and the amount of times that he talked about getting on his knees and praying. He really surrendered to this experience, and it's beautiful to read about and kind of experience through him. I also loved that this edition had actual pictures of Donn, and that was really great for reading with my son. It's really neat that you get to see actual pictures of Katahdin, of the mountain that he was lost on, when you're reading. And it was really great for my 2.5-year-old son to give him something different to look at as well. This is an excerpt from the book that just speaks to the testament of how much Donn truly persevered and found this internal stamina within himself. A study of Donn's wandering brings only astonishment at the amount of mileage covered by the boy each day. The distance from Baxter Peak down the North Peak Trail to Wasatch Stream and following it to Lunksu's camp, where he was found, or where he found humanity, is approximately 48 miles. But the guides who heard Donn's story and recreated the route he must have followed estimate that the boy covered at least twice this distance, perhaps 3 times, making from 10 to 14 miles a day over difficult wilderness terrain. He had no food. He was drinking stream water. He had berries a couple times for 9 days, and he's walking 10 to 14 miles in difficult terrain. So difficult, the searchers for the first 3 or 4 days did not even search off of the plateau of the mountain because they thought there was no possible way that he could have made it down those cliffs in the darkness, in the fog that presented itself that first night. But he did. He made it past like giant crevices he could have fallen down these steep cliffs. They were so steep and so rocky that when they sent search dogs after him that first day, they had to bring them back fairly quickly because their pads were getting all cut up, and they couldn't do that to the dogs. So they called in another round of dogs. They put leather shoes on them, and then they scented their trail. They scented his trail down to a certain place and kind of lost the trail after that. So they really thought that he would not have made it down those rocky cliffs, but he did. It is just wild. There is also a moment at the end where he reunites with his mom, and it's like, oh my gosh, you can feel it. As a mom, I can just feel it, like that need to reconnect. So he's about 14 miles away from here where his mom is, but they're on a river. The only way to get those 14 miles is by canoe. So instead of waiting for him to get from the cabin where he was found down the 14 miles on canoe, she got in a boat and met him in the middle on the river, and they talk about them hugging in that moment. And oh, it brings goosebumps to your reading. It was so good. I gave it 10 for characters. Donn is an inspiration. So neat. I'd actually love to dig into his life afterwards. I think he ended up going into the army. He did tons of those talks around elementary schools. I'd be curious what else he kind of did over the years. But as a 12-year-old boy, like, wow. Very, very impressive. The atmosphere, you're lost on a mountain. Yes, I loved this. This is what I was hoping that Switchback would be. I was hoping Switchback would feel like this, and it didn't. So this atmosphere, 10 out of 10. What's next? Writing style. Oh my gosh. Joseph Egan did an amazing job translating as Donn spoke the words to him, adding the footnotes, like I said, at just the right points, staying true to Donn's story, describing it. The afterword is really well written, just clear, concise, and moving. The plot, hello. 12-year-old boy lost on a mountain in Maine for 9 days. What's going to happen? What's he going to encounter? How does he survive? How does he make it through that? Intrigue, same thing. You want to know, you're invested in Donn pretty quickly in the story, and you just want to know what happens. Logic, I mean, it's nonfiction, so nothing, there could probably be a nonfiction that you felt was illogical, right? Let me know if you've experienced that, but nothing bumped me out of the story. I think that's a testament to Joseph Egan's retelling or writing of this. It felt very smooth. Everything made sense the way that it was told, and it was amazing. And then the last one is enjoyment. 10 out of 10. I enjoyed this so much. I'd recommend for any age. It is juvenile nonfiction, 9 and up, a great chapter book to read with your kids. My son's only 2.5, so he's not comprehending what's happening, although, you know, he'll repeat certain things or remember that there was a bear that he saw or different pieces like that. But he's, you know, he's not totally comprehending the story, but the power of literacy and reading to kids is out of this world. Their exposure to words, whether they understand them or not, can set them up for major success when they do hit traditional schools. This book was $3.95 when this edition was published in 1992. I think it's might be a little bit more than that. I'll link below the link to purchase it on Amazon if you're interested in getting a copy. There's also a graphic novel version that I really want to get because I think that would be super fun to read, where Donn was older when he worked with the graphic novelist to publish that one. So that looks really good. I'll link that down below. I think it's called Lost Trails. But my first 5-star of the year, 10 out of 10. Please read. Let me know what you think. If you've read this, let me know. Thank you so much for hanging out for another video, and I will see you very soon, hopefully, in another video. Talk to you soon.